What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage, and a big shout out, as always, to Mike from ETS coming on to answer some questions and talk some tuning as I cough. Okay, we'll give some people, we've already got some people in here anyway, but we'll give them a little bit of time to start trickling in. Well, Schmidt, hey, Jonas. Jonas needs help with cranking start for a LS2C5 Corvette. Everything else is LS2C5. That's an interesting combination.
LS2.
No, they didn't. Yeah, so it's a swap. What ECU are you using?
Yeah, let's start with that. It might be a cam crank correlation issue. That's my guess.
I mean, there's so many questions to be asked. Hey, De La Soul. Hey, David. Listen, while we're waiting on people to figure all this stuff out, what's going on, Brad? I've noticed a trend on Global B, and I want you to affirm or tell me I'm an idiot, because a lot of this comes from doing 5th gen stuff and seeing how virtual volumetric efficiency reacts and gets calculated, and how the math goes into it and changes everything. It seems to me on the neural network stuff that thing likes to be tilted more than it likes to be adjusted. So it almost is like it's got less shapes that it can conform to than the virtual volumetric efficiency.
Well, the main issue with the neural network is it's much harder to tune, say, in our opinion, a stock truck with a camshaft that's moving around within the neural network than, say, an aftermarket camshaft where you're just dealing with one, you know, kind of one section on the neural network. When that cam moves around, not only are you building separate tables that interpolate between each other, you would think because it's a stock vehicle that those would be the easiest to tune. Unfortunately, depending on the setup, it can actually be the more difficult one to tune. Because not only are you dropping a rock in a pond as you do the neural network part of it, you have basically four or five ponds that are all working together to get you their final number. So it does get complex for sure.
Okay. I got people saying they can barely hear you, so I'm adjusting your level. We'll see. Could use a little bit more, man.
You need to crank me up, man.
I got you cranked up. I got to figure out. I've got too many things going on over here with 6,000 default devices. Oh, you know what? I just turned this volume. That volume's all the way up already. Let me find the next volume I can turn up. That may be it. That may be as loud. Okay, so Jonas says it's a big cam. It's already been speed density and math, but he's having. Are you having cold start or warm start or altogether starting issues? I guess would be the next question on that, Jonas. Can aftermarket radio? Oh, go ahead.
Are we on a 411? I'm assuming we're on a 411 LS2.
I didn't answer that question. Yeah, what ECU are you on? No, if he's on the LS2 E40.
He's a right.
Would be my guess.
Maybe I had it wrong. I thought it was a C5 with an LS2 in it.
Yeah, it is a C5 with an LS2, but they didn't release a C5 with an LS2, right? LS2.
So he's running a 411.
No, he's running an E40 because he swapped the ECU over to run the LS2.
He rewired the entire car to run the E40.
You wouldn't have to rewire the entire car. Listen, we're not. Oh, it's a C6. Okay, 2005 Vet original ECU.
There we go. E40. Okay.
Okay. I was about to say, you're not putting an LS. Well, I mean, you could, but you would have so many other issues that you'd be dealing with. Cold starts is easier, but not perfect. Hot starts, and this is a cam setup. You need to lower your cranking VE. It's probably still at 100% and needs to be dropped down at least 20%, because you got to remember that cams are not efficient in the lower RPMs, and so it's not drawing as much air as a stock cam did.
Yeah, cranking air, cut your cranking VE, and maybe look at your cranking spark might help you a little bit. But more than likely, it's cranking VE, or your airflow values are just too low. If
Here's a
it's a
good
hot start,
question. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
no,
Hot
yeah, it
start.
depends on. Yeah, hot start. If it's a hot start issue, it could be injector temp on the injector side. So without looking at it, it's one of those four tables for sure.
How do you deal with the injector tip issue on reflashes?
A zero amount. I don't
Zero
like
them
them.
out. Do you put
Yeah,
them
zero.
back in afterwards? You just leave them
Never,
zeroed out. Yeah,
never, never.
yeah, I thought so.
It's gone.
Okay. Schmidt Head asks, can an aftermarket radio that is connected to the CAN bus can cause the scanner not to read correctly? And that's kind of a loaded question. Probably need more details on the platform.
But yes, I mean it could. It definitely could.
Yeah,
It could
on the
also affect
Global
your ground.
B, you get the dang security system error every time you're logging with it. E67 Cadillac. Yeah, it could definitely be causing issues. But E67, the radio shouldn't be on the same communications bus as the ECU, because the radio
Be that.
would be talking to the BCM, and the BCM would be the gateway, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming he has an older one. I'm guessing it's one of those
2013.
07s. 2013? Nah, that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, that shouldn't be causing any interference.
You've got something else going on.
Okay, what will a perfect 3D VE table look like? Now, before we answer this, Raul, we need to know if this is naturally aspirated or forced induction. If it's forced induction, is it turbo supercharger? If it's supercharger, is it a twin screw root style, or is it a centrifugal? All of these things are going to change the shape of the VE table. Turbo. Go for it, Mike. What's the turbo VE table look like?
If you take your VE table and you take it on a certain map point and you turn it sideways, as the VE table makes this kind of line, that line should essentially mimic your dyno graph as far as torque values. And that is to me, obviously it needs to be smooth. You don't want a bunch of pockets, spikes, holes. It needs to be very, very smooth and not have any steep transitions. But a good way to cross-reference it is if you took it, I'll use an NA one, not a turbo one, but if you take an NA card and you take the map values at say 100 kPa and you turn it sideways on speed density, that should identically mimic your torque graph on your dyno.
Yeah, so if you're peaking out at 4,000 RPMs, that should be where you start to lose efficiency on VE and it starts to trail off. It's not going to trail off fast. It ramps up pretty quick no matter what, especially on forced induction. You'll see that curve go up really quick where you're building a lot of torque early on, and it may hold out longer before it starts to fall off. But on NA, it's pretty much kind of that smooth molehill. Got some great questions coming in tonight. On a completely OE V8 car, how far apart on the LTFTs before you consider checking for mechanical issues? It's older, so not even a Gen 3. So if you were using long-term fuel trims to try and diagnose a mechanical issue, how far skewed out would they have to be before you'd start looking for mechanical issue? That's
I mean, obviously, if they're just maxed out in either direction, even on an OE platform, if it's maxed out positive and nothing you do, obviously you've got a leak. My only consideration is if it's the other direction, you could have stuck injectors, but then it's going to be unbalanced. You should
Right.
have a code for that either way because you wouldn't have if it's an OE style engine. But first see if they're balanced. Like, are both sides at -10 or +10? At least then the motor's burning clean on both sides, or at least an average. So do you have a universal problem or do you have a bank to bank problem?
And
And
have
then
you
it's a matter
replaced
of
the sensors yet?
yeah, and then is it rich or lean? Well, if it's dumping fuel, an O2 sensor, it only sees air. It doesn't actually see fuel. So if it sees air coming from anywhere on an older setup, you've got old gaskets, vacuum lines, anything
Cracked
that's going to induce
manifolds?
air, anything that's going to put air across that sensor, the sensor's going to think that it's coming clean out of the motor and it's just going to dump fuel on top of you. Smoke your plugs, probably kill your O2 sensor, kill your fuel economy, run bad, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, okay. Here's a good question. Trying to tune my C6Z on speed density only. MAF deleted. Hopefully the IAT sensor was relocated. Having issues logging for volumetric efficiency table. It acts like the throttle goes dead, then right back. Any ideas? Throttle goes dead, then right back.
I think you have to see the trim. Are your trims vastly positive and then you're in a transition state? And do we have a fuel pressure issue? It could be we could have a sensor going out without a log. It's impossible. But the good thing is if you have an issue that's that prominent, it's easy to find. It's not we're not trying to find a needle in a haystack. The bigger the issue, typically the easier it is to find.
Sweet.
It could be the VE itself, but it's hard to say without a log. But
Right.
I would if you're running a wideband or you're using narrows, but you could throw fuel at it. I wouldn't want to get too tricky with like impact factor or something like that, but it's going to be a little trial and error to see what is actually causing that. And then you could when you look at the scanner, make sure it's not a spark issue. It might not have anything to do with your VE, and make sure that your cylinder air mass kind of matches up and your VE table's not off in left field either, because that'll
he,
throw your spark off in left field.
he says the throttle slams closed, then back wide open, normally into 2 to 3,000 RPM range. Sometimes other places it's very violent.
Oh,
And
so it is.
hopefully it's not
Uh,
a. Hopefully there's no codes going on, obviously.
I mean, is traction control on?
Yeah, I was about to
There's
say.
also sometimes there are the speed density patches that play with the traction control, and it could be a patch issue. Without setting up the file, it's impossible to see. But it's you need to find is it's either fuel or spark. I doubt it's airflow, or you're tipping a torque in limit within your traction control system.
Yeah, which is a little bit wonky there. Obviously, it's a manual transmission since it's a C6Z, so we shouldn't be dealing with any torque signals from a TCM that's causing funky stuff, causing the throttle body to go closed. At about, if there's no DTCs, I would think it about have to be traction control or a bad throttle body. I don't know, but that would throw a code, right?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, I mean, a 1516 or a 121 code, typically you're going to see a 1516, but you can log your pedal versus your blade and see what doesn't correlate. If those things get out of whack, you're going to throw, the 2135, you're going to throw the 1516. You can't defeat those codes, not without risking your life.
Right.
But I would log the pedal, obviously, but, keep an eye on the spark, see if the spark's doing anything funny. But is the blade opening up by itself and closing by itself, and your foot is steady? Because I would think that would throw a code.
Yeah, I would
Or is it
too.
just or is it just a spark pocket? Or is the traction control using spark and pulling the blade back? And then it throws the spark and throws the blade forward.
Or is the traction control kicking in and your body flopping around in the seat causing your foot to go on and off the pedal? Because that happens to me a lot, especially whenever I'm in reverse doing about 30 miles an hour. Don't
And
ask me why I do that.
you can log the traction control events also and rule that out also.
Yeah, chicken foot.
Uh,
Here's a straightforward question. Do you turn on LTFTs or leave them off after tuning?
Typically, we'll leave them off. It depends on the setup. It depends on the setup. We've
Typically,
gone
I
back
leave
and
them
forth.
on.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, but we also deal with a lot different cars most of the time. So,
We had a huge argument with this with a GM engineer that actually came in to take our college class. General Motors paid him to come take our class, which we thought was pretty funny. We were originally a little worried about him, but we went back and forth with this long-term fuel trim argument, more or less Brandon and him, because he was intent on catching Brandon on this long-term fuel trim issue. And we argued about this for about a month. And finally, in the end, he finally understood and he agreed with us. But I'm here to tell you, arguing with an engineer for 6 week class over one issue, it was exhausting.
I
But
can only imagine. Listen, I am of the mindset, hey, a lot of the vehicles that I deal with are daily driven and thus are dealing with different humidity, temperatures, all that stuff every single day. And I like to be able to pull a log after we've said, okay, the tune's good. We're going to drive on it for the next couple of months. I like being able to pull a log, look at the long terms, and see how much we've drifted, or if something wonky is going on. But I mean, short terms doing the majority of the lifting. All the long terms are doing is populating a percentage of error off the short terms. It's error over time. And so what you can also see is what was the error today might be the opposite direction tomorrow, and the long terms are skewing you further the opposite direction. So keep that in mind. No, it was not Greg Banish, Schmidthead. I can already tell you that. Greg Banish would never be smart enough to take an ETS class.
I see there's some love there.
Oh, so much love. Oh, what else we got? What else we got? Great questions. We got a low spot. Talk about what you got coming up, Mike.
We're going to release Sea-Doo Power Sports tomorrow. It's going to be the first Sea-Doo course ever released. I know there's probably not a single Sea-Doo person that's going to see this, but we wanted to do something a little different. We're going to finish up Power Sports right behind that. We're going to do the Can-Ams, and we are working on Global B. Our plan tentatively is to release Global B at PRI this year. So we're going to be speaking at PRI. We're also speaking at an ASD conference in Michigan. We've got a few different things coming up with large classes and networks that we're going to release. But Global B is going to be the next thing that we're dropping. We made a lot of progress on Global B, tips and tricks, and we've learned a lot just in the last month. So we feel that we could probably do a very good Global B course released in the summer, but we're gonna take the summer just to triple check everything, learn even more, because we've learned so much in just the last month. And the plan is to release Global B at PRI.
So, touching on Global B, I get to ask questions now. So I'm seeing a trend, and I've got two trends that have popped up on me recently. Everything is going great. I make one adjustment to the neural network tables, train it, and then everything just goes to hell in a handbasket out of the blue. I mean, it's like flipping a light switch. Smooth throttle, fueling is great. It may be, 8% out here and there, stuff like that, but not to the point where you would expect anything bad. And I'll make a change to maybe 3 or 4 of the cam position tables, train that, throw it in there, and just even coming off of idle, it just starts getting jerky. Have you experienced anything like that?
Uh, I tuned one just like your. I didn't, but you'd have you've had quite a go around with your truck. You've had some difficulties, let's say, that were out of your control. We'll leave it at that. But I I can only think you're doing something when you're moving around when you're doing different cam positions in the neural network. That's the only thing I can possibly think. And remember, that thing is always training and learning. And
Right. And
what we have
that's very evident whenever you're looking at data that that thing is learning and making adjustments. And that'll kind of you finish because that leads into my second question.
from what we found with Global B is anything that has a naturally aspirated operating system, and you are adding force induction to it, whether it's a C8, a pickup truck, anything along those lines, the neural network has to be tuned, and it has to be tuned very well. And and then not only that, you're dealing with most of those setups like the trucks. You have the cam movement. So to tune, it's kind of reverse, right? So to tune a truck like yours, in our opinion, is much more difficult than for you to tune a cam Blackwing. So if you had a Blackwing with a cam in it, you could tune that in an afternoon probably, and not have all the headaches you're having with your pickup truck.
All right.
So that neural network, trust me when I said we tried to get around it. We, because we fought it, we fought it, we fought it, and you cannot fight that thing. You have to work with it. And when you actually understand it and you work with it, everything falls in line. And then the truck starts to act normal. So what'll happen, what we've seen is when people actually do tune these, they don't do their neural network correctly. They'll let the trims take over, they'll power enrich rape them, and the
Mm,
truck might be okay. Like people will get it delivered. But the problem is about 3 weeks down the road, the customer's going to be knocking on your door.
right.
So just because it ran great for you, it's not gonna hold strong as the neural network starts to learn if you don't do the procedures correctly.
Yeah, because the neural network has the wrong input data, it's going to have the wrong output data. And so it's going to start learning towards the wrong goal, essentially. And that's something I've noticed just on doing the math stuff without disabling or trying to bypass the neural network, but leaving that completely in play. You can make a map adjustment that will almost completely solve all of your fueling, but then it'll start to skew off as the neural network is learning on top of the map adjustment that you've made. And so you're in a cyclical kind of process. And so that's been the interesting learning point going through that. Everything else is simple. Like all the spark and all that stuff acts as you would expect. The torque stuff acts as you would expect. Um, yeah, it's just as I said, what's getting me is the whole shape thing because it feels like if you look at a neural network table for say the 108 ICA, it has a slope to it, but it's not like we expect on VE whenever you're looking at it in 3D. It's not so much, in my mind, an accurate representation of airflow. And I don't know if that's just because of all the other inputs that are going in as part of it. We can't think of it as a VE table because technically it's not.
There was there were talks about, and this was early going, of making, within the program, pretty much like a custom operating system VE table, which that may come to fruition one day, and that will solve this. But that might be 3 years down the road. It might be three
Right.
months down the road. But That would obviously bring everything in line, and everybody would probably, love it. But until then, there's, it has to be learned and done this way, and it's really going to separate the men from the boys real quick. This neural network.
Right.
You're either gonna play nice with it and learn it, and not try and hack your way through it, or you're just not going to be able to tune these vehicles without having a ton of comebacks and irritated customers or friends, or not being happy with your own truck and trying to figure out why. It's just that it's another animal in that aspect. And I think you're seeing that now with all your tuning experience, kind of the intricacies of it and how it fights back. It's not
Yeah,
like
it literally does. Yeah, and so and that's what gets me, because I was probably 30 adjustments in on it when it started going wonky. And the thing about it is I went back from like to 28 where everything was going smooth, relogged 28 and made adjustments, and then it started going wonky on the next one. And that tells me that it's something I'm doing on the way that I am uh, shaping my tables to make the data work in what I think is the correct way. And so I'm having to change my approach uh, because I've gotten so used to doing virtual volumetric efficiency and working in zones and dealing with the limited shapes that we can use in each individual zones of an S or a dome or a bowl and stuff like that. But there is a lot of smoothing and interpolation that's going on in the math whenever you do run that through the trainer. So whatever you put in there and then run it through the trainer, if you look at one and look at the other, you might find a couple points that line up, but for the most part, it has drastically changed a bunch of the stuff that you made. And so it feels more like it is a slow crawl towards getting it correct, as opposed to, hey, I can hit this 5 or 6 times and really get it in the ballpark. It's like I got to make these small adjustments to eke my way or inch my way there. You agree or disagree?
I do. I think what's going to end up happening, because these tunes do take a little while to develop. I think the shops and even the people are going to build a certain kind of a kit or a platform with their camshaft, their everything. And
Right,
that way they can just plop in the data that they've already worked on for, like you said, 30, 40, 50 revisions. They already have that neural network data to plop in. And then they can go out and tune a vehicle in 3 to 5 revisions,
right,
and it's over with. But developing those neural network patterns for different camshafts, it just doesn't exist yet. It just
right,
hasn't been out long enough. And people read those programs, so they're not easy to steal. You
right.
can't, if you tune your truck perfectly and someone buys it, and then they want to do something to it afterwards and they don't have your program,
They're out of
they're
luck.
just going to read the stock file.
Yeah,
So that in itself is going to slow this down, because all the copiers and all that stuff, it's going to kill all that real quick or slow it
yep,
down.
yep, yep. So, yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Okay, we got about 10 minutes left here, even though we started early. Does any more questions? I know everybody is, the chat room has been very quiet because everybody is just like, neural network sounds crazy and definitely
Uh-huh.
deep in the learning curve to tune newer vehicles. Hey, listen,
We're,
but,
we're gonna
but,
we're gonna teach it in depth. We're gonna build something in depth, spot by spot, and when it comes out, it will be the go-to neural network course.
and until it does, I'm going to be putting stuff out there for the people that are crazy enough to try and dive in on their own. And you know, who knows, maybe we'll stumble across some magical things that work, and they'll be in the
Yeah,
ETS course after that.
yeah. There's still a lot to learn. We've made a lot of headways, but there's still a lot to learn. And but we definitely feel a lot more comfortable over the last, I would say, 6 or 8 weeks than we have before. Because we're trying, we've got some very high horsepower ones out there. And when you start to multiply the horsepower, especially in the four digits, things become amplified at higher horsepower. So small problems become big problems.
So let me ask you, from this standpoint, then, a locked out or a 4 degrees face cam probably walk in the park from that side of it, because you're only dealing with one of the tables. You have the option to only train off that table, and that would be more like what we would consider how we do VE. It's a couple revisions and everything else starts working right.
I think that would be easier. There are some things that people are going to learn when they do take our course that are different than, say, the Gen 5 stuff. Um, and it's those changes that work perfect on a Gen 5 that people are now incorporating in Global B, and it is backwards. So
Yeah,
and that's just it. People say, "Well, I can tune Gen 5, I can tune Global B." Well, there's a solid dozen tables that are completely different and they act completely different. So, although some
that's
things do carry over, but not everything.
that's without even getting into the 3D Spark tables, which I guarantee you everybody here in the chat room and watching this video has not even seen the fact that some of the Spark tables now have drop down boxes where you go on the Z axis and make adjustments to it there. Like there's some really crazy stuff in there that would I said you could be an expert at Gen 5 and think that you could do Global B, and that is not going to be the case. And I've found that for the most part, I haven't turned anything off. Like I've got fuel trims on, I've got DFCO on. I use a lot more filtering on the scanner side to filter out some stuff like DFCO, but I haven't turned any of that off, and I've had pretty good luck. I'm running a little rich now, but right now I'm getting 18 and a half to 19 miles to the gallon. It makes 10 psi of boost. It's running about 0.79 and under PE, and so it's in, and it's weird to me to think that I've never shut off the short terms. I've never shut off DFCO. Obviously, never shut off PE like they used to do back in the day. Haven't shut any of that stuff off, and yet I'm still
who
able to.
who did that? I just can't. I was told that, and I'm like, that is the most insane thing I've ever heard. I mean,
Dude, there was and it's the internet after all. There was a how to tune document from the early 2000s that somebody put out, that the first step was to go in there and turn off power enrichment so you could use the short terms to do all of your tuning. And I'm just like, how many people blew their motor following following these instructions?
someone's facing a low-level lawsuit over that.
Yeah,
That code.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. There's a class action going. Who followed this Word document from 2001 to learn how to tune? So, well, it's 8:25. We're going to do the wrap up since we started 10 minutes early. What up, TJ? Good to see you, brother. Anything else? I will pitch. When is the GM Master Class in Indianapolis?
Well, are you coming? You coming?
I'm coming. That's why I
You're
want to know
coming.
what it
Okay.
is. It's next. It's about a month from now, right?
It's yeah. We've got a few seats. There's only 15. There's only going to be 15 seats in that class, so I think it's about half full. We got a bunch of people kind of on the fence, but if you guys want to get in, let me check the calendar real quick. I want to say it's in 1 month. It is May 11th and 12th, and Brandon and I will be there. Goat Rope will be there. We're gonna you'll have 2 full days with us at the facility, which is a super cool facility, dyno in the ground, whole 9 yards. We're gonna provide lunch for you guys, and you're gonna get another month worth of online content after the class. And we do a Q&A every week with us live. on Zoom to go over your content and make sure that you absorb the Gen 5 stuff. So whoever those 15 guys that show up for that class, they're going to be good to go, and we're going to make sure of it, including Goat Rope. We're going to get him squared away.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning some stuff because whenever I was getting into Gen 5, really there wasn't anything out there on it. And so I was kind of on the forefront of trying to figure out how all the torque stuff worked. And I've had luck. Even though it's one of those things that some people have questioned my methods, but they work. And so there's more than one way to skin a cat. We don't bring up the tuning school in here, Calibrate Ed. De La Soul wants to know, do you guys have a military discount?
We do. Email me.
Yep, there you
Email me.
go.
Email me, Mike at Elite Tune, and just tell me what you need, sir.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll be there. Also, don't forget, I've got a discount code, Goat Rope. Is that my discount code?
It's Goat Rope.
I should probably know that. Save you some money off everything, and they also have in-house financing. Don't forget about that. And then let me know here. For the last minute here, we'll start a poll. Do you guys like Mike on the show? And I won't tell Mike the answer, so you can be honest. Because I do. I like polls.
Is that like a live poll? How many people are even on the channel?
We got 30 right now. Well, we've got one vote for yes.
I'll take one. I guess it's all no.
There we go. There we go. 13 votes in, 14 votes in. It's a landslide. So we can have Mike back. If he doesn't skip out on us like last weekend. Yeah.
Well, my son, it rained here today, so I didn't have baseball practice. And I wouldn't mind skip baseball practice, but I'm the coach of said baseball team.
Exactly.
Which is over. That's over in about 3 weeks. So I can come on pretty much any time if anybody wants to answer any questions.
We do have one request. You need to get a nice mic.
Me. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to become a frequent guest, got to get a good mic because I've got you maxed out on everything and you're still coming through a little bit light, but Mike needs a bigger screen. What you want here? You want me to just put them all over me and hide myself? I can put myself in the corner if that's what you want, Jerry. Okay, excellent. Thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks for Mike for taking the time out of his day as usual. As said, keep your eyes peeled. I got a little bit of news. I'm picking up a new puppy tomorrow.
Nice. What kind?
Corgi. So
Corgi.
Short round. I wanted a short dog that was round. So I don't know how much that we're flooding right now. It is literally Moses level of floods going on. We're in a flood watch until 1 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to, I don't know if we're going to get very much content done this weekend. So we'll see. And then keep your eyes peeled because it said the power sports stuff's coming out. If you guys are interested in learning how, I know I've had people ask me in the past about tuning power sports stuff. And honestly, I don't get into tuning stuff that I can't put my hands on. Theory tuning is all good and fun and all that, but unless you can actually prove it out, I don't like to do that. So, yeah, exactly. Corgis are not the best in floods. Okay.
Not without a life jacket.
Oh, one last thing. What's your thoughts on the ZR1 that's coming out?
I think it's going to probably be pretty badass. I mean,
what's your thought on the E-Ray?
I think the E-Ray is pretty badass too, honestly. I haven't got my hands on one yet. I think I'd have to drive it. I'm not a huge fan of the C8. I think the Z06 was a huge step up, and not just in drivetrain alone. But I think the Zora they're gonna throw the house at, or whatever they're gonna call it, the ZR1.
I think I'm going to weigh in on here. I think that the C8 is the ugliest Corvette ever made. And I don't think it's a Corvette. I think they should have renamed it to something else if they want to make a mid-engine car, because it should have the motor in the front. I like the idea of the flat plane crank and the dual overhead cams. Do you think that'll be on the ZR1 with the twin turbos?
It will be.
So that'll fix the torque issue. Everybody gets all warm and bubbly inside saying, oh, this makes more than a C706 on the horsepower, but the C706 makes 150 foot-pounds more torque. And torque is what makes vehicles move. I don't care who you are.
I think the real comparison is gonna be the C7 ZR1 versus versus the new one, the new ZR1 coming out. And I think
But
those numbers, because you have to figure rear wheel drive, that new, the 2019, 2020 ZR1. I mean, that thing is an absolute animal set up correctly. I mean, to me, that is a unbelievable car.
right.
So I would like to see those two side by side and see what ends up happening, because they have to beat that car. If you don't beat that car substantially with all this new tech, then and that's going to be hard to do, I think. But
I want to see how it performs versus the Camaro Z011LE, because that
yeah,
car is an absolute monster at the track. And I think people don't realize that it's probably faster than everything except for the ZR1. It's up there with the Z06. It handles so well. And it was kind of a black eye in the Corvette world to have a Camaro that performed that well. But, oh, God. How long till there's a 14 to 71 Hemi mounted in the front of a Boomer C8? Schmidt has C8's the first Corvette I actually like the looks of. It's the first Corvette that is a real super sport. All of you guys. Oh,
Ferrari vet. It's the knockoff Ferrari vet.
yeah, exactly. Listen, I still can't bring myself every time I look at them. I'm just like, I would rather have a C6 or a C7. Honestly, I think the C6 is just the best looking car ever made. But
they're all good cars. They all have their place, and it depends on what you fit in. I'm a bigger guy, so I'm not a fan of crawling in a C8. You've got that huge kind of center console section that comes down. I've spent some time in them, and that's kind of annoying to me versus say a C7 or a C6. But I, I don't know. I don't think I would buy just a normal C8. I think you have to
no.
have more on the table. You've got to have more in the bag than what that car comes with out of the factory.
Well, and on top of it, who wants to drop the cradle out to work on the motor? I mean, you're either leaning across half the car to get in through the top, or you're pulling the whole motor out the bottom. And I don't know, if they could just put the C7 interior in a C6, I'd be done. It'd be the last car I ever bought. Buy a C6 ZR1 and be done with it. Okay, everybody, we're wrapping it up now that we've gone an extra 10 minutes over talking about Corvettes. Mike, I want to thank you for taking your time, man.
Thank you for
And
having me.
always, and you guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. ABT, always be tuning. Let me turn this down before I flip it over to the instrument doesn't even